Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Blake. I'm very excited to get to react to the college football playoff rankings that are going to be coming out in short order. But overall, I've had a pretty good Tuesday.
Yeah, I do wonder where Texas A&M is going to be ranked.
Yes.
If they do go ahead of Indiana here, I do wonder about that. Where some of these ACC teams rank now, I think is my biggest question. Now, I don't agree with this, but I did see that Brandon Walker said that the ACC technically could be left out of this playoff because the bylaws state that it is the 4 highest ranked conference members that would get an automatic admission or automatic qualifier into the playoff, or excuse me, 5. They ain't leaving out the ACC. They are not leaving out the ACC. Get it out of your mind. Get it out of your head.
Hold on.
They ain't doing it. If South Florida gets it, Miami goes, hello.
Well, but here's the thing, though, Blake, is that JMU, if they were to theoretically rank JMU, which I think right now is the best G5 representative to put in there. They have one loss. Their one loss was to Louisville, and it was at the beginning of the season, and it was a close loss. So same argument for where Notre Dame's place could be applied for JMU eventually surpassing them. I would argue a JMU team that finishes the year with one loss and wins their conference in the Sun Belt isn't a good team, but could theoretically box out the ACC. That's all I'm saying. It's possible. It's on the table.
There's just no way. There's just no way. You can't.
At this point, I'd rather not have an ACC team in.
I would rather not have. I would rather not have any G5 team in there either. So this is what we're going to do. We're alive a little bit earlier. We will talk about and react to the college football playoff selection or order, whatever you want to call it. But we're also going to get to a couple of games. But before we do get to those games, very quickly, Joe, any thoughts on this Brian Kelly LSU fight that's going on here?
I mean, leave it to Brian Kelly and also leave it to LSU to turn something that was already a calamitous mess into an even bigger calamitous mess. I know that you're a lot closer to this situation than I am. I made a video on it earlier today for the Sports Geek for TikTok and trying to put everything into a 1 minute, 30-second video explaining what was going down with the back and forth legal ramifications and framing of this whole ordeal. It was almost impossible to do because there is so many layers to this crap. I feel like we're going to just end up getting some sort of a settlement and this thing will go away. And this is just the efforts of both sides trying to put out information to make either side look like it's a villain.
In the grand scheme of things, you know what this tells me? Brian Kelly's not coaching again.
What, you think he's done? You think that?
Yeah, I think he's done because Discovery's coming. And LSU's going to say that they're firing you with cause. And let me tell you what they're going to come at you with. They're going to come at you with Greg Brooks and the tumor situation. They're going to come after you with the alleged affairs. They're going to come at you with the divorce. They're going to come at you with the alcohol. You're going to now have to prove, if you're LSU, that was actual causes for termination. But make no mistake about it. LSU can't win this, in my opinion, when it's all said and done. However, why would Brian Kelly push the envelope on this when he's going to get paid regardless of all of this until LSU came with any form of action in saying that he was being fired or terminated with cause? Why would he want all of this in discovery about what's going on? Your children are going to be involved. Your child is still employed by LSU at the current moment. Your daughter is still, if I'm not mistaken, still in South Bend, or was still in South Bend. I think she was getting a master's degree. Why would you put your family through this if, first off, and then second off, why would you want for all of this to come out in Discovery if you're trying to get a job? And for Discovery, I mean, LSU is going to throw all the things that they have out there. Photos, evidence, everything's going to come out in this, Joe. If you're wanting to coach somewhere else again, why would you want all those allegations out there on you instead of you just going to a South Florida beach somewhere, kicking your feet up and drinking as many Coors Light and Michelob Ultras as you can?
Well, maybe that's what LSU is trying to threaten, is that all that information, which has been brought up, that they are trying to threaten.
LSU didn't threaten it. He sued LSU. LSU did not threaten it. LSU did not come to him and say, they did come into him and say, we're trying to give you a $25 and a $30 million lump sum.
Which, however, I mean, good on him for trying to get his full amount. As much as I don't like Brian Kelly, you should try and get your full amount.
I agree. But they also didn't sue him. Brian Kelly's attorney sued. So now LSU is going to counteract and say, and I hope that Brian Kelly's law firm told him, hey, listen, they're going to take massive shots at you. Joe, and here's the thing that bothers me the most. I know he didn't work at LSU. I get it. I don't want anybody's legacy, LSU's or his, to be tarnished. Listen, do people think he's an asshole regardless of what you think of him? Joe, look how many wins he's gotten. Can we just settle this shit and get it over? Let's both move on.
Well, that's why I feel like it's going to go to a settlement, because you don't want to get to the shit tossing point of this where they're just going to take.
That's over with, buddy. But that's over.
The only thing, though, if he's willing to sue, that kind of feels like there's an implication that BK and his lawyers think that they don't have any proof on any of those allegations that you referenced. Because you're right, it's a huge risk. It's a huge risk that going to court and all this stuff being brought up and dissected. It's a huge risk.
If you're Arkansas and Bobby Petrino, you're deciding if he should or shouldn't be fired because of past marital affairs, you're going to do it now for Brian Kelly, who literally just got fired, and it came out in Discovery in the court of law that he was cheating on his wife, allegedly. I'm just, again, allegedly. You're not going to do that. His legacy is going to be tarnished. He's going to have to go somewhere not like LSU. I don't even know if he would go in the P5 now, or P4 now, to be honest with you. I mean, Joe, they're going to take a swing. Now you got the Attorney General's office, like the literal government, fighting against Brian Kelly.
The biggest problem I feel like with all of this, though, is that Woodward released a statement saying why they fired him. So they can't retroactively come back and say that they could fire him for cause, not specify what that cause is, after they made it clear what the reason for was a lack of performance. Well, that's where like this whole thing, I think, starts to get really muddied, why LSU does not have as much leverage as it's maybe being led on to be.
You say that until LSU comes out with a statement of their bylaws in Section 1, Article 8, subsection L, stating that the sitting athletic director at no point in time can hire or fire someone that makes over $250,000. That such person should then get board of supervisor and presidential approval. So he might have not had the ramification or the authority to say, we're firing you for your athletic performance. Now, you and I both know he got fired because he got his cheeks clapped versus A&M. Like, let's just be real. But they're going to fight this, and this is getting, yet again, very dirty. And does this hurt the LSU coaching search is the biggest problem that I would have.
Well, if Brian Kelly's lawyers were smart enough, I think that they would try to put as much information out there as possible to make LSU seem as dysfunctional as possible, or at least threaten to do so, because you bring up a really good point. That's where LSU gets hurt the most in all this, is that if there's even more evidence that LSU is a disorganized mess behind the curtain, because there's a lot of desirable candidates out there that are being brought up.
And no more behind the curtain, though, big dog.
But that's what I'm saying is that a lot of it's out in front. But what else could Brian Kelly prove? Just like LSU is trying to prove that Brian Kelly was a awful person and that everything that he did, and he had a lot of transgressions that were worthy of him getting fired for cause. Brian Kelly has an opportunity to do the counter, which would do irreparable damage to LSU that would completely destroy their upcoming coaching search. Yeah, this whole thing, I think your biggest takeaway with this whole thing is, why can't it just be normal? Why can't LSU just pay him and get this done and over with? Because the added layers to it are only making them look worse.
Divorces are never clean. What
I get that, but if you want to attract the 10 at the bar, you can't have your ex-wife sitting there screaming at you, fighting with you at the bar too.
That's a lie. You better have a shitload of money.
You better pay her to stay away. That's the point.
All right. You better have a shitload of money. I only got 27 cents. I have 2 kids. So nevertheless, don't come to me knocking. Let's get into a little bit of this here, Joe. But before we get rolling, everybody do us a favor, hit the like and share. Share to all those groups if you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Every Ruffino and Joe show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Download the FD Sportsbook app if you're an Android or Apple iPhone. Come have fun with Joe and I this college football season. Joe, the playoffs are going to be right around the corner. You and I are going to be reacting to it. We're going to be placing all of our bets with our partners over at FanDuel. Download the app. If you have any thoughts, questions, and concerns, go over to FanDuel.com/RG for more details. Let's get into some games here before we get to the college football reactions. Joe, Minnesota versus Oregon. Oregon coming off a thriller in Iowa. Minnesota a couple of weeks ago ending the college football playoff chances for teams like Nebraska. When you preview this team and you preview these teams and preview this game, what are your thoughts with Oregon versus Minnesota?
Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite in this game for Friday night at Oregon. Blake, I know that this performance that Oregon had against Iowa, it was frustrating to watch on the offensive side. They're in a very difficult position with their wide receiver talent because of the injuries that they've endured. To this point, Dan Lanning did not provide an update on the situation with DeCorian Moore and if there's going to be any reinforcements coming. Like, I think the first and foremost important thing for this matchup is I see an easy opportunity for Oregon to win this game and to potentially cover that number because of the way that they ran the ball when they needed to most against Iowa. We saw Whittington, Davison, and Hill Jr. They've had multiple great games, but they ran all over Iowa for 261 yards. They're stepping into a game, and this is the most important thing of this matchup, Blake, against a Memphis run defense that is 84th in the country in EPA per rush allowed. They are giving up a lot of big plays on the ground. It happened multiple times this season. We saw it against Iowa. We saw it against Michigan State in their last game. This Minnesota team started hot, but it feels like over the last couple of weeks, they've cooled down tremendously, setting up Oregon for what should be a handed victory.
So, look, when Heatherman left Minnesota, I thought a lot of us asked the question of how Minnesota would react defensively. Well, Joe, they're 21st in the country in total defense. They're 21st in the country in rushing, 21st in the country in rushing offense. Not that matters to Oregon because Iowa last week was second in the country in run defense, and they ran all over them. So Minnesota, just don't think that they're not going to be able to walk in there and run all over you. Their secondary's been a little bit iffy in moments and times, but this Minnesota defense plays very tough. And I wonder, with a struggling pass defense that statistically is the worst that they do from a defensive side of things, if it's not beneficial to Oregon that you have some guys nicked up. Now, Oregon's going to have to find some players and find them quickly when it comes to guys on the outside, very quickly. And I don't know what's going to happen there. You know, I told you, I asked around to some people with my connections to DeCorian Moore. I don't know of his status this week. However, what I do know is it doesn't seem as bad as maybe some anticipated that it was last week. However, with all of that being said, Joe, I do look at Oregon and say to myself, look, I just don't know if Minnesota offensively can keep up. They're 118th in the country in total offense. They're 121st in the country in rushing offense. And you're going up against the number one secondary statistically in the country in passing yards allowed in Oregon. This feels and seems like a matchup that is made for disaster when it comes to Minnesota. Oregon is, after scathing through last week versus Iowa, I'm really, really interested to see how a young team, a very young team, who yet again, on the last second play of a game in the Big Ten on the road, who found a way to win, Joe, they just keep doing it. Like, I think of Penn State, you finding a way to do it on the last play. You found a way to do it against Iowa on the last play. How much confidence is this young team building, and how much does that translate in a game versus Minnesota?
No, absolutely. And I think that that's a really good question to be asking is that translation. I think, Blake, another aspect to this, why I really have a lot of faith in Oregon. There's a bunch of games that we could talk about this week where there's potential upset opportunities. The Miami-NC State game, I think, is going to be a really interesting one for that discussion. We're going to get to the Iowa-USC game. I don't think that this one does. I think that Minnesota is trending backward. I don't think that they're going to play spoiler like they did with Nebraska. The last two performances have been incredibly, incredibly troubling. I'm just so impressed by the way that Oregon's run defense, their front seven, stepped up against Iowa. Of all teams, they stepped up against Iowa. Minnesota's got a solid offensive line, but they have had a ton of issues offensively, especially as of late. 126th in EPA per rush. They're just not having any juice in the run game whatsoever. I know that they've had injuries at running back, and it's kind of depleted their ability to get full production there. But man, Blake, I feel like that this Minnesota team just does not have much to turn to. I really like some of the guys that they have on their defensive line and in their own front seven. I'm a big fan of Anthony Smith, who's got 11.5 tackles for loss on the year. He's got 8.5 sacks. He's one of the best, quietly one of the best defensive linemen in the country. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, Drake Lindsey's cooled down quite a bit, and I feel like that they just don't have enough to keep up with this even banged up Oregon team. Where are they supposed to find an edge? There's just not very many areas that they're going to be able to sneak up on Oregon after they had what should be considered to be an impressive win against Iowa.
Especially when you just can't run or throw the football.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we just saw Oregon come out of a game where, because of weather and because of situations, Dante Moore did not have the viable options that he normally would have. And, Joe, they still won. How? They just ran the football all over one of the better defenses in the country, and it didn't matter. Now, I will say this. You can't keep getting three. You're going to have to find a way in the red zone to start getting these things into seven. Now, I go back to Penn State. I go back to Iowa. You got to convert in the red zone. Statistically, they're phenomenal there, right? But at the same time, my eyes can see the two closest games that you play. Actually, the three closest games that you played, one of them you lost. You didn't convert all the times that you needed to in the red zone, right? Like, Joe, I think of Iowa, I think of Indiana, and I think of Penn State. You got to go get 7. You can't go get 3. The biggest mismatch in this one, though, Joe, you talk about the offense. You talked about the banged up running back room too, but they can't run the ball. They can't run the ball, can Minnesota. I understand it. This just isn't a team, and you're not built for a situation where you can throw it. Joe, we constantly come out here every single week and look at games and say, that team's biggest weakness, that team's biggest strength. It matches up perfectly in this one. That's why it's probably going to be close.
Right.
You know, like, it happens every single week. Can Minnesota Joe, what is the one thing that all of these games that top teams, when they've been close, what do they all have in common? The team that suffocated the time of possession, like Arkansas almost clipped A&M. I mean, Ohio State hadn't really been tested because they just blowing out everybody. So there's that. You look at Alabama. What did Florida State do? What did South Carolina do when they almost got clipped? What did Ole Miss do to Oklahoma? Look at the games around the country and these games being close. By the way, what did Penn State do to Indiana last week? They all held on to the football and made the teams that are highly ranked in them tackle in space. You've seen it with Bama. You've seen it with Indiana. You saw it with Oregon last week. Can Minnesota find a way to just keep a banged-up Oregon team off the field and try to make this a 24-21 type of game and see if they can't knock them off that way? I don't see it going that way. I think at some point this young Oregon team's going to break through against one of these conference opponents and blast them. And I don't know if it's not this week. Iowa just wasn't the situation where that, with the weather and everything, I thought that they still could do it then. Is it going to be this week? It's just this game is built to go down in a situation where I think Oregon not only wins, Joe, I think they cover.
I'm surprised by the line being this close, and I think that maybe that there's a little bit of
what do they know that
impact
what does
here
know that we don't? What does FanDuel know that we don't?
I think that they're assuming the issues with the injuries at wide receiver and not having DK Moore. And we saw the impact that the passing game was just not as reliable as it was in the past. They clearly had to lean on running the football. But I think the thing that they proved is that if they don't have options in their passing attack, they can just go all out onslaught running the football. And that's why, I really think 6.5 point spread. This feels like one of those Friday night games where maybe you're out at a bar or you're just hanging out in your living room and you flip it on. And you're like, oh, Oregon's up by 17 points right now. And then you look away and the game's just over. They just take control. They slow it down. They do their thing. They get in and get out of there. I do wonder, in all full seriousness, this won't be the game I think it catches up to them. But at what point does this team get healthy again? Because I feel like that the slow grind down of the injury issues have turned Oregon into a version of themselves that's not as threatening as it can be, but they've got enough depth that they can survive it in the meantime.
It certainly could catch up to them against USC. 1,000% to catch up to them, because if USC finds a rhythm and you're going to have to go score for score with them, oh, good heavens to Betsy. It could get bad here. I will counteract you with one thing. You said you look up and Oregon's up by 17. The last time that I looked up and a team was up 20-7 and I turned my head to play and do some things with my kids, I came back and Penn State had taken a lead on Indiana.
Minnesota's not Penn State, though. The reason that game was created and the reason why that game went the way that it did was because Penn State had the premier athletes at key positions. They had two guys that were highly regarded as elite prospects that really hadn't developed to the degree that I think everyone was hoping. But Nick Singleton took over and Dennis Sutton took over. I think as good as Anthony Smith is, I think he's a really good player. He's not as physically talented first-round draft prospect type of a guy as Dennis Sutton is. And I think that he could definitely cause problems, but he's facing off with a really good Oregon offensive line and doesn't have a really elite supporting cast around him like Dennis Sutton did with some of the talent that Penn State had on their defensive line. I just don't see – it was more definable to sit here and look at the Penn State game and go, that was why that game went down the way that it did. I don't know where I'm supposed to point to and say this is the hidden X factor where Minnesota sneaks up on Oregon. The injuries, is that it?
I think you might have written down the wrong spread.
Is it not 6.5?
It's 25.5.
I did write down the wrong spread. 25.5.
Yeah, Oregon minus 25.5.
I actually might still take 25. We'll be quite honest with you.
I'm not taking 25.5. I just got a text during the show, and they were like, check FanDuel with Oregon and Minnesota. I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's 25. It's 25.5. But regardless, I could see that. That makes a lot more sense. Look, I think this one's gonna get bad. The biggest strengths for Oregon still are just they're gonna overwhelm Minnesota. Give me Oregon. I don't make me pick the points right now.
I don't blame you for I don't blame you for that after I bungled that. But no, I do think that Oregon ends up winning this game handedly, and they end up winning comfortably.
All right. Let's move on here. Joe, Iowa versus USC. Iowa coming off a heartbreaking loss to Oregon. It's the team we just talked about last week. USC continues to roll here. If USC is going to find themselves in the playoffs, they're going to have to go through Iowa, and they're going to have to go through Oregon here. But first, they got to go through the Hawkeyes. When you preview this game here, you preview Iowa versus USC, how do you see it going down?
Look, Blake, I've said this a number of times. I really respect this Iowa defense. I really think that this Iowa team is better than they're going to get credit for. And if they finish the season with 4 losses, it doesn't really reflect how solid of a team that they've been this year. They are the most fundamentally sound defense that I have watched. They have done a fantastic job of keeping everything in front of them. The one game that they were really truly challenged was against Oregon. The spread on this one, and I believe that this one is correct on FanDuel, is 6.5, by the way. Blake, I just think, and this kind of applies for a lot of the games where I feel USC has separated themselves. USC is too explosive in my eyes for Iowa to be able to keep up with them late in the game. I know that the last time I said that was against Nebraska, and Nebraska kept that game low scoring, but USC's ability to produce when they needed to, when it mattered the most, showed up. And they also proved in a setting like this, when they get into a messy game against a team like Iowa, that they can win in a gritty fashion. Like, I really think that USC, their big advantage here is being able to rely on their playmakers that have produced for them so much. It's an easy thing to continue to turn to because, quite frankly, Iowa just does not have that level of juice if they go down by 10 points to be able to keep up in a shootout type setting.
Joe, when it mattered the most, they couldn't get the stop they needed to upset Oregon. And you're talking about an Oregon team who's banged up with wide receiver. It's raining, as Forrest Gump would say, it's raining sideways. It's raining from all kinds of ways. It's a game that's perfectly built for you and how you want to do things. This is a different animal. Look, I think the biggest thing this year, when I look back for the 2025 season, regardless of what happens moving forward for USC, when I look back at the 2025 season, the 3 things that I walk away from when I look at USC in the Big Ten, boy, they're physical up front. They are physical along their offensive line. The way Lincoln Riley has been running this counter game, McCray and the tight ends, the physicality with the running backs, we saw that last week. Joe, we look at Lincoln Riley teams and say they lack a certain kind of physicality. We talked about it last year when going into the Big Ten, man, they're going to lack the physicality of this league. And I look at here and say, the shit. No, they don't. They have been a very physical football team, and good on Lincoln and good on USC for that. However, Joe, this is another horrible matchup. I agree with you. I think this defense is really good. I just wonder if if Iowa can keep up. Now, Iowa's going to have to they're going to have to play their style and control the entire game here. You're going to have to win the time of possession. You're going to have to win on third downs, which they're actually pretty good converting on third downs. The best thing that they do offensively outside of what they do in the red zone. You're going to have to, from the starting kickoff until the end of the fourth quarter, you must control every aspect of this game. If you do not play from out in front, you cannot play catch up here. You're just not going to be able to play catch up. Now, when I look at this game and I look at USC and I look at Iowa going on the road to LA. If it were flip-flopped, I'd be like, man, like going into that place, USC's not been good on the road this year. But as I look on FanDuel, and it's a 6.5-point favorite for USC, and what they've been able to do from a scoring perspective at home, Joe, I think they're going to give Iowa problems. I literally saw a team last week that was one-dimensional. and Oregon line up and run the ball right down their face. And there wasn't a damn thing that they can do about it. This USC team and their front and their offensive line is just as physical. I love what Lincoln has done in the run game and this passing attack that continues to get better every week. Second in the country in total offense, ninth in the country in passing. I think USC is going to be way too much for them. And the way that they've played at home versus how they played on the road has been a completely different style and completely different team.
I think that's the really interesting point to bring up here is that USC has been really good at home. They have they've taken advantage of, which I kind of would like for them to schedule more night games because that's where they've been able to create a tremendous advantage for themselves.
Can we take one of my and give their fans a little bit of credit of how chaotic it's been in there?
Yeah,
and a couple of games that it's look, man.
Admittedly, I've been to that stadium, and the times that I've been there, it wasn't all the way full, and I was frankly a bit unimpressed when I was there. And it feels like that there's been a lot more intensity, which I do give them credit. It's been better this year.
It's been very nice, but continue. Sorry.
Yeah, a couple of parts with this that I think USC needs to watch out for. USC, as I've talked about a lot of times, why I respect them, and I think that they have a chance here to potentially beat Oregon, to potentially end up in the college football playoff mix. They're number 2 in EPA per pass. They're number 11 in EPA per rush. They just generate explosive play after explosive play. I'm a very big Mekhi Lemon fan. I think that King Miller is one of the best stories that not enough people are talking about, averaging 8 yards per carry and having over 600 yards. And Maiva has a couple of bad mistakes here and there, but he has been pretty efficient in a lot of games this season. By the way, credit to him for hawking down a defensive lineman who picked off one of his passes and forcing a fumble. That was one of the most badass things that I watched.
I laughed so hard at that. Continue,
dude. I think the kid's name was Stone. Funny. Yeah, dude. That kid was like blown away. He's like, how did he hit me that hard that the ball came out? So credit to Maiva for doing that. This is the best secondary, the best coach secondary that USC's passing attack has seen. So what ends up breaking through here? Does the consistency of a Phil Parker defense, does it just show up? Does it keep everything in front of them? Does it remove that explosiveness? And does this game end up being low scoring enough that Iowa ekes it out? Because if that happens and this game is low scoring, that's how Iowa wins. USC's run defense gives up a lot of big plays still, man. 100th in EPA per rush allowed. They give up, and it translates. It showed up against Northwestern. It showed up in the Notre Dame game. It showed up in the Michigan game at times. They give up a lot of big splash plays on the ground. And once Iowa's offense gets going and they're able to do that, unlike what they were able to do last week against Oregon, that is how they kill you. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion here that USC wins this football game, because Iowa does have and deserve respect for when the game goes their way, finding ways to drag their opponents down to them and pull out a victory.
They can't. They do that all the time, and USC can't get sucked into playing that style of game. Joe, if I'm Lincoln, I'm running a little bit of tempo. I'm going the opposite of what Iowa wants to do. Here's what I'm trying to do with a team offensively that I know that Iowa is averaging 29 points per contest. However, against P4 opponents, they're not. I'm trying to get to 24 points as quickly as possible and say catch up. That's all I'm worried about. Like if I'm Lincoln, I'm trying to get to 24 because they're not. Iowa, in my opinion, can't get there on them. They can't. They don't have the explosiveness themselves to play the catch up. Joe, they're averaging 21 points against P4 opponents. That's neither here nor there. They can't get there. They can't get there. They've only done it once where they've gotten over 25 points against a P4 opponent. Look, man, I'm actually a lot more confident than you. Give me USC and give me the points. I think they're going to cover here, and I think Iowa doesn't have enough. I respect the physicality that they do, but I got to be real with you. I saw an Oregon team that was one-dimensional in the rain beat you, and I don't think that they – look, this passing attack is really good. They can attack you in a lot of ways, and the way that USC plays home. And Lincoln Riley, I swear to God, if you make me look like a fool, I'm going to tell everybody in Florida that you hate Jordan. Don't you dare embarrass me here. But I'm going to take USC, and I'm going to take the points.
I think USC is going to be able to cover as well. I think that this creates the inverse can apply for what I just broke down. This is the most explosive receiver room that Iowa has seen. And as nice as it is to say and bring up, one team has a well-coached defense. The way that you beat a well-coached fundamental defense is you have better athletes. And this isn't just pure gimmick, Lincoln Riley, spread you out, creative play calling. Mekhi Lemon's a dude, man. Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane are two guys that are going to get drafted early in the upcoming draft. There's so much speed, and I think that that's what's going to end up translating. You ready to yell, by the way, about the playoff ranking? Looks like it's
I am. The college football playoff rankings are out. Joe, the top 5 unscathed. Nobody moved up. Nobody moved down. But we are not going to read through the top 25. What Joe and I do is we're not going to give you a list. We're not going to read down it. We just suggest if you're watching this segment that is presented by our good friends over at FanDuel, by the way, that you go and look at the top 25 for yourself. But Joe, the top 25 is out for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, or from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. What are your thoughts?
Well, one, this is just a very offhanded one. I think Iowa staying in the rankings is deserved. The way that they played against Oregon was worthy. Now, where I have issues. Why are we placing these Big 12 teams? Why are we placing BYU after the first time that they played a challenging opponent, they got punched in the mouth? The same thing applied with Utah when they played the same exact team at home that BYU just lost to. They got punched in the mouth. They are ahead. Forget I could gripe about Miami and their placement. They moved up a lot, up to 15.
Well, they were at 18, were they not?
Yeah, they moved up 3 spots. It's a pretty big jump for not really doing anything and playing Syracuse. Blake, I think that Vanderbilt needs to be ahead of both of those Big 12 teams.
I agree.
I think that it is ridiculous that we are in this position, Blake, after watching both of these teams. The only time that they've played in a challenging opponent, forget when they played one another. That's all good and whatever. Who cares that BYU beat Utah and it was a close game? Whatever. That context is not important for this conversation. Put those two in whatever order you want. BYU should be ahead of Utah. Vanderbilt has played a more challenging schedule. They have more respectable wins. And I would argue that Miami also has a more respectable resume as well.
Okay, glad you're back with us.
Did I disconnect?
For like a half a second. It's all good.
This happened last time we were recording the rankings too. For some reason, the playoff committee must be trying to slow me down.
Tony Petitti doesn't like you talking about other conferences. Big Ten. I agree. Look, BYU being placed at 12 and Utah being placed at 13th. Here's the problem that I have with that. I would have Vanderbilt, Miami, USC, and Michigan all ahead of them. All ahead of them.
I didn't even register. I didn't even look that far. You're right. USC and Michigan should also be ahead of the two of them.
By the way, I'd put Georgia Tech ahead of them too. I'd put Georgia Tech ahead of them too. Because when it all comes down to it, stop Haynes King, who had 500 yards 2 weeks ago. This team got shut out last week. Joe, this is what I'm talking about in reference to records. We talked about this last week. Their record doesn't mean shit. It doesn't. BYU is not a top 12 team. They're not. So when we talk about Texas, when we talk about Oklahoma, when we talk about Miami, when we talk about USC, when we talk about Michigan, we point out the fine problems that they have. Why aren't we doing that for BYU? Why? Now, I could understand Georgia Tech in the metric of strength of schedule that they haven't played anybody. I don't think Georgia Tech deserves to be ahead of USC at the current moment for what it's worth. No. However, Miami has no business being placed at 15th. Neither does Vanderbilt. Hey, Joe, who was Vanderbilt's losses to? Oh, wait, that's right. Vanderbilt's losses was to number 4 Alabama on the road and to Texas on the road that came down to the final play. And you're going to try to convince me because they have 2 losses that they don't deserve to be ahead of BYU. I don't get this. So I got a team in Vanderbilt that lost to number 4 and to number 10, and both of them really competitive games, and we're just saying, well, they have an extra loss. Well, they have an extra loss because they faced 2 top 10 teams. It's a joke. It is a joke. And I got to be real with you since we're on the Big 10 or Big 12. Why is Texas Tech ahead of Ole Miss and Oregon? Don't give me.
I'm conflicted. I'm kind of actually, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm kind of conflicted on this. I don't know if I agree with you or not. I don't know which side I stand on, if I'm being.
All right, well, let me try to convince you. What is Ole Miss and Oregon done other than lose the game that Texas Tech also has? Oh, well, Texas Tech beat our number 8 team. Your number 8 team last week had no business being there to start off with. That's number 1. Ole Miss's loss is to number 5 by a touchdown. By a touchdown. And what we all agree is a tougher conference. Oregon's loss comes to number 2. To number 2. Texas Tech lost to Arizona State. I get Morton was out. I understand all of that. But just because they played a BYU team that you had at number 8, this means nothing to me when that team is freaking awful, literally awful offensively. Joe, we're talking about Ole Miss's loss being on the road to the reigning SEC champ. To the reigning SEC champ. A team that we all think that could still win the SEC. I'm sorry, dude. This is all bullshit. Having these Big 12 teams ahead of some of these big SEC and Big 10 teams is dog water. By the way, Oregon went on the road on the rain without wide receivers and beat number 21.
Okay.
By the way, they went on the road, the same team that almost knocked off number 2 last week. Oregon did the same thing. Like, Joe, we don't, these dudes don't, these old Rudy Poos.
Okay, hold on.
Stop. Watch the games. They don't. You cannot convince me that they watch all the games.
Okay.
Sitting ADs, you have sitting athletic directors who are at their own games, and you're going to tell me you watched all of these? It's bullshit.
Okay. I forget that part for a second here. Let's just focus on the actual rankings themselves, because we can't do that every single week. We just can't. We're wasting our breath on something that we can't change.
It gives me diarrhea.
Someone needs to clip that. Blake, I think that I agree with you on the Ole Miss notion for Texas Tech. I think that Texas Tech has the argument to have moved up over Oregon. Ole Miss, I 100% agree with you. Their one loss that they have this season is to Georgia. Here's the one thing, though, that I will say. We're not supposed to be valuing losses. We're not supposed to be sitting here and prioritizing losses for how we're framing these teams. The one thing that still works in Ole Miss's favor is the way that they played against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is sitting there at 11. They dogged Oklahoma. They made Oklahoma look incredibly weak, and they're placing them at number 11. That, to me, is enough of a point with the rest of the schedule that they've played and the offensive dominance that they've displayed. I know that they didn't look great against Arkansas and a couple of other spots in Kentucky, but that was at the beginning of the year. They deserve to have sticked at 6. I can absolutely make the argument for Texas Tech to have moved up to 7 and for Oregon to be at 8, though. I think that Texas Tech has shown when Baron Morton is on the field, and they have Baron Morton and they're at full strength, you shouldn't just remove a loss from the equation. But if he is available, finishes the season, goes to the college football playoff when they're making these final decisions, this team is by far the most dominant in the Big 12, and they have dominated every team they have played when he is on the field. Every team that they have played in their conference, they have smoked. It's very Indiana-esque, where they have just completely blown out everybody. Even in the game this past weekend, where they were completely messy and they were not able to finish in the red zone, they still held off and handedly beat this BYU team. I agree with you. BYU was overranked in the first place, and I think it's a little bit of an overinflated data point to say Texas Tech beat BYU. I think that the movement for Texas Tech is justified considering where Oregon currently sits. I think that Oregon is a legitimate threat still. I think that Oregon, as they get healthy and they get back to their full strength, they're going to be fine. But at the current moment, they have shown shakiness. They have shown that they have not played to their truest potential. The Wisconsin game is still lingering. The Iowa game is not the only one that we're using as evidence here. I think that it's not wrong to say that Texas Tech earned the right to move up.
I don't think that I don't hate that they moved up over BYU, but I definitely hate, Joe, you're going to hate me saying this, they did not take the metric of strength of record or strength of schedule into account. They didn't. Because I look at strength of schedule. Now, this is not great for Ole Miss. It sits at 32, but their strength of record is at 6. Okay? You said that you were going to do that, and you didn't. By the way, you want to know the Texas Tech's? It's 61st. So, literally, you have a team that doubles your strength of schedule and is ahead of you in strength of record, and the metric that you were supposed to use. By the way, I could do this for Oregon too. Oregon's 24th in strength of schedule, and they're 7th in strength of record. So, Joe, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, Oregon played tougher teams. I get.
But wait. Okay, I don't mean to cut you off.
Hold on. Okay. The resume has got to matter. The teams that you're playing have got to matter. We look at the quality. We look at the wins, and if it's not a ranked win, we don't call it a quality win. I got to be real with you. Penn State is the best team that Texas Tech would have played by now from an athlete standpoint. From an athlete-to-athlete standpoint, sure. Penn State is by far, and Indiana struggled with them. Oregon struggled with them, and they had to go on the road and beat that team. That's just because they're 3-6 doesn't mean that Penn State doesn't have dudes and they're not a good team. Doesn't always indicate your record doesn't always indicate you as a team. Joe, they just I don't get it. They don't look at strength of record and they don't look at strength of schedule when it comes to the metric that you agreed upon.
One other thing that I want to bring up with this, Texas and Oklahoma and their positioning. I'm a little bit intrigued by that. This is a little bit less of a yelling point, more of just a
them being at number 10, Texas being at number 10, and Oklahoma being at number 11.
I think Oklahoma's ultimately boxed out because if they lose to Alabama, theoretically, how far do they fall? Does Vanderbilt leapfrog them? I think, though, that Texas, I know that they're one spot apart from one another. I think that Texas is in one of the most prime positions that they possibly could be in. This obviously requires them to split the Georgia-Texas A&M situation. I think it's a lot to assume that Texas wins out. I think that there's a really hard matchups, and it would require them playing like 10 times better football than they've had this entire season. If they beat Georgia, they move up tremendously, and if they lost to Texas A&M, they wouldn't fall back far enough to completely take them out of the equation. And also, if I'm judging this correctly, they wouldn't be in the SEC championship game, so they would just confidently sit there. If they lose to Georgia this weekend, as long as it's close, they move out of the top 12. But if they beat Texas A&M, they then move up and probably back in as one of the last teams in. Texas has the best position out of any of these bubble teams. I would argue better than Oregon. I would argue better than we can't talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame has no frame for this because they're not going to get challenged at all. But I think Texas is in a very unique position that if things go according to plan with these two big games coming up, that they could really lock their slot in.
Well, with all due respect to Notre Dame, and I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to yell at me, I got to be real with you. Joe, let's just say hypothetically they beat Georgia and or God forbid, let's say they lose this week to Georgia, but find a way to beat A&M. And you have a 9-3 Texas versus a situation where you got a Notre Dame team who played Texas A&M and didn't beat them.
Actually, you're bringing up a really good point here, dude. Notre Dame is in a bad spot right now.
They're in a bad spot. Now, let me throw this at you too now. I don't want to hear, well, Notre Dame played them early in the year because you're assuming that Texas A&M can't get better, which they have. So Texas is going to play the best Texas A&M team to date. Le'Veon Moss will be back. This team is rolling. They got connections with the receivers. I got to be real with you. Yeah, Texas might sit in a great spot. On the inverse of that, if you're Notre Dame, you better be praying. You better be saying, go Dogs all weekend. You better be saying, go Aggies all weekend in about 3 weeks. Texas is a killer to Notre Dame at the current moment because, Joe, you can't look at the record. You can't look at a 9-3 team and say to yourself, oh, well, they're 9-3. Texas is 9-3. They have a loss to Florida. Well, Joe, their 2 losses then would have been to a top 5 Georgia or number 3 Texas A&M and the number 1 team in the country in Ohio State. Now what?
Well, here's the only one thing with Notre Dame. Texas is already in the picture at the current moment. So if this scenario that we're portraying with the 9-3 Texas is in the discussion to get in, I don't know if Notre Dame truly is the team that they're getting positioned against. This is
who would be the other team?
I think that the conversation would be brought up with Vanderbilt. I think that the conversation would be brought up with Oklahoma. So this is part of what's playing in what my argument is. But that's what I'm saying is I think a 9-3 Texas team would deserve to get in over a 2-loss Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma's probably they would automatically get in over a 3-loss Oklahoma, and I think that they would get in over a 2-loss Vanderbilt team because they would have the head-to-head. That I think is the more important matchup to sit here and discuss. I don't know if it's as much Notre Dame, but I think to your point that there's going to be a big counter argument against Notre Dame. There absolutely is going to be a big counter argument against.
Dude, but you say that though, Joe. You say that, and I'm looking at where the playoffs, like what the seeding would be at the current moment. I don't know. I don't know about that because there's going to be shakeup within this too. Because either Bama's going to lose again, A&M's going to lose for the first time. What happens with Miami? I don't know. Does the ACC get left out for Miami when Miami beat them in the beginning of the year? I mean, like, there's a lot to counteract this. But, Joe, I got to be real with you. You better pray to God Texas and Oklahoma start losing here. If I'm just being blunt, you better pray they start losing. And then you do have an interesting conversation with Vanderbilt versus Notre Dame. That's the one that I would want to have a better conversation about because I would say
Notre Dame gets in it over Vanderbilt. Notre Dame gets in over Vanderbilt.
No, I agree. I agree with that they do. But you would have to have the conversation of what team deserves to be in there. And that would be more because you're not getting in over Texas. I'm sorry you're not. Because if their losses come to number 1 and number 3, whew,
so they have a Florida loss that's not going to look great in that conversation. That's the thing.
Yeah, but they also have 3. They also have 3 top 15 wins. You don't.
That's fair. Well, Notre Dame would have if Pitt and USC win out and Pitt is still ranked. Then they would have.
They're not going to be because you're going to beat them. You're going to beat them this week. And they're going to fall out of the rankings. And then they got Miami next week.
No, I would argue if Pitt went to the ACC championship game in a couple of weeks, they would probably put them back in the back end of the top 25.
So
if Pitt wins out, they'd be a 3-loss team. It'd be a 3-loss Pitt team.
If they lose this week, they'd be a 3-loss team.
Yeah, and then if they won out and they went to they won the ACC championship game.
Yeah, fair, but I mean, I don't think they're beating Miami. I mean, I know we're playing hypotheticals, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I don't know. Let me go ahead. I was
just gonna say I have a chaotic hypothetical that I just want to put onto the table here. I like kind of getting in these nightmare scenarios. If USC beats Oregon, if Texas wins out and beats both A&M and Georgia, these are all plausible things, but this isn't like a ridiculous thing to frame here. These are all like real
championship game,
right? So you now have a 1-loss A&M team, a 2-loss Georgia team, a 2-loss Texas team, a 2-loss Oregon team, a 2-loss USC team.
I can't keep up. I
know. There's a lot of layers to this. I'm just saying that would be the most chaotic possible thing that can happen in the next couple of weeks. That absolutely would knock Notre Dame out probably. But I think that is the one thing to pay attention to the most is like what happens in those specific matchups. There you go.
The interesting team here at the current moment, to your point, is going to be USC. Because if USC beats a ranked Iowa this week and then they beat Oregon, Joe, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to this Notre Dame thing. I mean, you better pray to God that they do win out.
Notre Dame has the head-to-head. Notre Dame has the head-to-head, though.
That's what I'm saying. You better. The opposite side starts coming into effect here. That you kind of now need USC to kind of prevail here. because it's going to be your biggest win. And if USC finds a way to win out and they go 10-2, then you say, well, look, man, we got a USC team that's in the playoff that we beat. We went on the road to Miami in week 1 and we lost to them. So your strength of schedule starts coming a little bit of like, okay, well, yeah, maybe Notre Dame does deserve to be in here. USC is the most intriguing team to me in all of this. Because if they find a way the next 2 weeks, they could find themselves into this thing. Oregon, again, I mean, like, Joe, are they going to fall all the way out of the top 11? But the problem that I have in this, and I wanted when you were bringing this up, if you look at number 11 and you look at number 12, they're currently right now Miami and South Florida. That means that a couple of these teams are getting left out for an ACC champ that doesn't belong there and a USF team that probably doesn't belong there either.
I don't know how they came up with USF being ranked, by the way. I have no idea where that came from.
Because they blew out whoever.
I mean, that's bad shit. Who did they even play? Wait, who did they? Oh, it was UTSA that they played that they blew out?
I don't remember. I know Tulane kicked the shit out of Memphis, but I know that they played on like a Friday. I remember watching the USF game. I mean, look, I love Alex Golish. His name's about to start popping up in LSU circles here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I need USF out of this thing just in case.
They're not. They shouldn't be a ranked team, period. They are a 2-loss G5 team.
Well,
I just don't know
who's the highest G5 team. I mean,
what do you mean?
There's going to be
USF is that they're just kind of throwing them in there. They're just
no, but what I'm saying is there's going to be a 2-loss G5 team. There's going to be an ACC champion.
JMU still could be a 1-loss G5 team.
Let's move past JMU for just a minute. There's going to be probably a 2-loss. Well, that Florida win's going to give USF and then Miami. Joe, a couple of these teams are going to get knocked out because of the G5 again and the ACC. We're going back to our argument last year. We're going back to our same fucking argument. Dude, again, here we sit a year later and we got the same damn argument. The ACC,
which is why the breadth of yelling about this is like painful.
But I mean, I get it, and I know that we argued about it, and everybody fought over these teams having a spot. I get it. But, Joe, what if Oregon does lose? I mean, they're at number 8 right now. So if they lose to USC next week, or I know that if they lose to Minnesota, they're not losing to Minnesota. But let's just say that you lose to USC. What do you do with USC? What do you do with Oregon? I see a spot at number 11. I see a spot at number 12 that don't belong to the teams that currently sit there.
I mean, it's a fair.
They don't belong there. You could say, well, Texas is going to lose out, so Oregon deserves to be in. They're going to lose one of those games. But Joe, what if they don't? I mean, again, what if they don't? Then you got to have the God's honest conversation about Texas and Florida, or Texas and Miami. Texas's losses.
You're talking about in Texas specifically in what regard?
Yeah, because the SEC might get hosed out again in reference to an automatic qualifier from the ACC. Let's just say Texas, who's at number 10 currently, splits Georgia and A&M. However it goes, they're going to have to get in this playoff regardless. Yeah. So that part doesn't matter. What matters here is that you got a 9-3 Georgia team or 9-3 Texas team who's got a loss to number 1 and a loss to number 3, hypothetically speaking, in this scenario. And you're trying to tell me that a 2-loss G5 team or a 2-loss ACC team in Miami deserves that spot over Texas. We're going back to what we talked about with South Carolina last year of the SEC or Oregon getting hosed for one of these teams that have an AQ.
Okay, Blake, I understand why you're bringing this stuff up, but
Joe,
I understand that, but we can't do this every week. We can't, man. We can't do this every single week. I understand the frustration over it.
So then what do we do?
Nothing. We can't change it. We don't have control over changing it.
Here yelling all day.
No one is going to listen to us by yelling all day. I'm sorry. I wish it worked.
Oh, this pisses me off.
I will just throw this out there. I'm genuinely kind of disappointed because I felt like last week was a really good starting point, and they already went right back to contradicting themselves.
They did.
Completely went backward on contradicting themselves. I feel like that there are a lot of issues that come with this. It all comes with that middle grouping. I don't even really think that it's really smart to rank. I mean, the Louisville and Virginia deserve to, I guess, stay ranked. I just don't. I'll be frank. I don't respect any of the ACC teams. As you just sat here yelling, I don't respect any of them. Just put in the team that wins. Let's get better resumes that are in here in the back end higher up. I don't know. I guess we'll see what ends up happening, but this is a very weird launching point because this weekend is going to have some cataclysmic results that completely shift the top 10. And I'm worried, does BYU move up? Does Utah move up? Do we see some of these ACC teams move up? They shouldn't. They should stay exactly where they are. They better, if the committee has any balls, if Texas loses this week, they would move USC up into the top 12 if they won. If they had balls and they wanted to actually live by what they're trying to preach here, they would move up USC because they'd have another ranked win. They'd have a good win at home. And if they do it handedly, like we projected in the preview, they would deserve to be in there before BYU and before Utah would.
I don't like kicking out Texas for USC.
If Texas lost this weekend, though, I would think that USC would belong in there over Texas with a better record.
There's no way that you have a human brain and you believe that when the losses come.
We literally did a whole. But okay,
Joe, you're then looking at record.
They have a loss to Florida. And
who does USC have losses to?
Illinois and Notre Dame.
Okay, then be quiet.
Illinois is a no. Illinois is a better team than Florida. Illinois is a better team than Florida this season.
You tell me that Illinois got the dudes up front that Florida does? Get out of my face with that.
That's just one data point that they've got the dudes up front. They've got a better record. They've played better this season.
Joe, again, I said you're about to attack record, and then you confirmed it by saying they
got I don't care. I've said this multiple times that Florida.
The only thing that you Rudy Poos care about is the damn record.
No.
It's not about the quality team.
I am not one of those people that's saying this bullshit about the record because I just spent the whole 30 minutes saying that BYU and Utah isn't good. I have given Florida credit for being a solid team that can upset teams. But Blake, they got dogged by Kentucky on Saturday. This Florida team is in shambles. Florida did.
Sure. They fired their head coach. It doesn't stop the fact, guess who else is in shambles? Penn State. And they just took Indiana to the fucking wire, and they didn't get moved.
But Indiana didn't lose like Texas did.
Get it.
Texas lost to Florida.
Why didn't you move up A&M? So you can't.
Those are not related. Those aren't related because Indiana didn't lose. Indiana didn't lose.
Joe, you basically just said that outcomes against opponents don't matter as long as you win.
No. Indiana didn't lose, and I have a similar result on Texas A&M's resume.
You're confirming exactly what I'm saying.
No, I have two similar results where they had close wins against bad teams in the SEC on Texas A&M's resume.
Against 3 and 5 teams? No, 3 and 6 teams?
What's Arkansas and Auburn's records?
3 and 6.
This is my point. There's no argument to move up Texas A&M, and I think the same thing applies here with why I was yelling with you last week about USC.
It's a better team. They got the number 1 strength of record and a better strength of schedule. But Indiana just doesn't have an out-of-conference win. I guess we don't weigh that. I guess we just don't weigh that.
Is that anymore. A requirement?
It should be. It should be going and playing hard teams on the road should be weighted more. Let's just say hypothetically A&M went into Notre Dame last week and did that. Why does it change? Why does it change now? We're so focused on what just happened until, it doesn't really matter now when it fits our narrative. Don't come at me with that. It also comes down to a fact of I don't think USC is a better team than Texas is. I don't. I think
USC has put out more competent performances than Texas has one really good game that they played. They've one really good game that they played.
They played competent appearances against Rudy Poo-ass teams.
No.
Joe, they went into Nebraska and almost lost.
They went to Florida and lost.
Who did?
Texas did.
I don't care about the Florida loss. It means nothing to me.
It means we got super chats we got to get to before we get out of here.
All right, we only got 4 of them. Oh shit. Max sends a $2 super chat. Says, Joe, that spread's at least 21.5 for Oregon, Minnesota.
Yeah, I got that. I got that.
Wrote that down wrong. Yeah, it's okay.
I accidentally wrote down the USC spread. I was very perplexed by that. That was a major mistake by me. Thanks for catching that, Max.
We all make mistakes. It's all good. Eddie with a $10 super chat says, answer this scenario. If USC, Oregon, and Michigan all finish 10-2, who gets in the college football playoff? This means USC beat both Oregon and Michigan. Well, it's going to be USC because they have the head-to-heads. I don't think that's hypothetical.
Wait, hold on a minute, though. You understand what this is implying.
That Michigan would have beaten Ohio State.
Yeah, that would be the true chaos situation, which I don't think is going to happen.
But if it does, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because USC has a head-to-head win over Michigan. That's got to matter.
I think that, but here's the problem, though, is that Michigan would have the best win on the season out of any.
It doesn't matter.
No, it should. It absolutely should. If you're a ranked team on the bubble and you are 10-2. Are
you kidding me? You cannot be in a situation where you play each other and I beat you and then you get in over me because
I understand that. Well, no, but that's not what I'm saying. Blake, I think that the more important thing here is forget of who those teams get in. If that scenario happens, the following Big Ten teams would get in. Ohio State would still get in. Michigan would be confirmed in. USC would get in. Oregon, or if Michigan beat Ohio State and has a 10-2 record, they would be a lock, and then therefore it would lock USC in.
Then Oregon,
because of what you just said, Oregon would be the team out. Oregon would be the team out.
Michigan's not winning out. So,
dude, I kind of am rooting for that. That would be insane if that happened.
Elks with a member of 3 months. He says, who are Vandy's wins? One win versus a team with a winning record. Vandy has beaten no one, Blake. They have a better strength of schedule than Ohio State does.
Here's where I will.
You hear what I just said? So
yeah,
they have a better strength of schedule than Ohio State does. So go sit down somewhere. Thank you for being in for 3 months.
Normally, I bring this up with trying to defend the Big Ten. The Big Ten plays a lot of these teams at the top play a lot of Big Ten teams that are right on the outside of the top 25 rankings. Like Minnesota's got a good record. Iowa wasn't ranked, but wasn't ranked for a long time, but they had a really good record. Illinois got a good record. Vanderbilt is one of the examples of a team that they have played all the teams that are solid in the middle of the SEC, but not on the back end. I don't think Vanderbilt deserves to get in, but they do have respectable, not quality wins, but respectable wins against Missouri, against LSU. And that's it. Because I don't know if I'm going to count South Carolina.
You let Indiana in without shitty wins.
Yeah, but Indiana's unscathed.
They weren't unscathed last year. They didn't have
one loss. They had one loss.
And they didn't beat a ranked opponent all year. You can't
still arguing about last year. How are we still arguing about last year?
Because it's the precedent you set. Every time that that people come out here, it's always, well, if this Big Ten team does this and they have this record, what the SEC went through isn't the same. When I got a better strength of schedule, a better strength of record, and more games versus ranked opponents. If you play more ranked opponents, here's a fact. You're going to have more losses.
Win those games. Win those games.
Play
Like
tougher
tough shit.
teams. Play tougher teams.
They can't help the schedule that they have. If you have to play ranked opponents, beat them.
Canceled games in the beginning of the year.
Okay, now I'm turning against Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt, the 2 times that they've played ranked opponents, they've lost. So they also don't have ranked wins
when they played them.
Missouri's not ranked anymore, and they shouldn't be ranked. Tennessee also shouldn't be ranked if they beat them at the end of the season.
And again, Oregon won't have a ranked win. If the scenario played out at top, they wouldn't have one either.
But they would have a better record. If neither team has ranked wins,
if
they would have a better.
Oregon's 10-2, they would have the same exact record.
You didn't specify that.
You
said I meant if in the current state of things.
If USC beats Oregon and they have the same record, one team's actually got a ranked win. Why don't you beat ranked opponents? All right, we got to get out of here. Marshall with a $10 super chat says, if A&M had a different name like Georgia, Alabama, or Texas with the same schedule featuring a win on the 2025 national champ or runner-up in Notre Dame, they'd be ranked number 1, 2, and not 3.
I don't agree with that. I'm going to keep re-emphasizing.
They would do it to Bama. You know that they would put Bama at 2. You know good and damn well they would.
I just don't think it has anything to do with the brand. I think that A&M's resume is really good, but the 2 close performances that they had against bottom teams in the conference are justified for keeping them out. It is.
Elks says, if SEC fans and Blake are going to cry that Indiana didn't deserve in the playoffs last year because they lost to the only good team that they played, y'all got to have the same energy for Vandy this year. They beat a ranked opponent. Indiana did not. Elks, they did.
Stop. I don't like framing playing a team that was ranked at the time that they played them as a ranked win. They're not ranked anymore. Missouri's not ranked anymore. Penn State was ranked.
You did the same thing.
It's not ranked in win.
You did the same thing for Indiana because of record. You did the same thing. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Literally.
What I'm talking about. You just said that they have a ranked win against Missouri. That's not a ranked win.
Okay, fine. And I say that you had a precedent last year with Indiana who also had the same thing and lost to the ranked opponents that they played.
But Vanderbilt would have 2 losses. Indiana would have 1.
And who are those losses to? To teams that are technically right now higher than them in the rankings. Yes or no?
Texas could theoretically finish 8-4 in unranked.
What if Alabama wins the SEC?
That doesn't justify moving Vanderbilt up.
Indiana. What? If they go 10-2 and they have a loss to 2 teams in the playoffs?
But you just tried to paint it as if, just because Alabama goes to the SEC, that's still a loss. They still lost by 2 scores. 3 scores.
Are they not supposed to?
What do you mean?
What do you rankings? I mean, y'all just.
I don't even know what to say to you anymore. I don't even know what to say.
Constantly shit on SEC teams. It's all y'all.
No, it's this glaze of like just because they're in the SEC that they have to get propped up.
Every single team that we said is going to be out revolved around an SEC team. Oregon's a lock. Michigan's a lock. USC would be a lock. And then you're saying, oh, wait, hold on.
Because those teams would earn ranked wins. Those teams would have earned ranked wins. What is Vanderbilt's ranked win? What is Vanderbilt's ranked win?
If Oklahoma wins out and they're 10-2, which you didn't bring up and we didn't talk about them, they beat Michigan. You came in here earlier and talked about USC and Michigan and said the win basically
was in week 2. What is the other respectable win that Oklahoma has? What is it?
So again,
it does matter.
No, you're saying, but it was in week 2. You know what else was in week 2? When A&M went to South Bend and won. Games that you play have got to matter.
They do matter, but I don't like the overemphasis on, this proves that Oklahoma is in better. All right, we got to get to this last super chat because I know you got to get going.
No, don't play tougher teams. I want SEC teams scheduling FCS and non-conference since they won't respect our conference. Indiana does it, and it works for them. Joe, they don't play a P4 opponent outside of the Big Ten.
Okay. Stop that for 1 second. The main point that I'm going to bring up that I brought up in the offseason, there needs to be unified scheduling. You have to be required to play a certain number of teams.
And you don't have that right now.
No,
So,
I think that it's plausible. I think it's absolutely plausible.
Okay, it can be plausible, but it's not what we have right now. So A&M going on the road doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter anymore. Big Ten hates you Northerners while you're wearing a Yankees hat. That's why I hate you right now, because I can't even be mad at you right now because you got a damn Yankees hat on. Oh, now you just showed your Irish sweatshirt. Now I'm still mad.
You knew I was wearing this.
We'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.